President Donald Trump is back, with Colorado in his sights. Never before in modern history has this state been so central to a presidential campaign's message. Trump promising to liberate Colorado from a migrant gang, calling Aurora a war zone, and saying the gang was going to, quote, take over the whole damn state. Minutes ago, Trump also pardoned the Coloradans who violently stormed the Capitol, attacking law enforcement 4 years ago in a failed attempt to keep him in power. Donald Trump is back.
Many people thought it was impossible for me to stage such a historic political comeback. But as you see today, here I am. The American people have spoken. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun.
Trump has already started signing executive orders which do not change laws but do direct the government on how to enforce them. Trump is expected to significantly change immigration policy, declaring an emergency at the southern border and requiring immigrants seeking asylum to remain in Mexico while they await court hearings in the U.S. Trump says the federal government will drop its diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and will no longer recognize that trans people exist. Within the hour, Trump signed pardons for the 1,500 people convicted for the January 6 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, the failed attempt to keep him in power in 2021. Trump's pardon announcement minutes ago said that only 6 cases were being held back for further review, presuming that those are the most egregious cases of attacks on law enforcement, which did not involve Coloradans. Here are some of the Coloradans who appear to have received pardons tonight. Jacob Clark from Trinidad, who hit a police officer with a 2x4. Patrick Montgomery from Douglas County, who tried to disarm a law enforcement officer, kicking him in the chest. There's Jeffrey Sable, who charged officers, pulled an officer down the stairs into a mob, then tried to flee overseas. There's a man named Todd Casey accused of shoving police, telling officers he would have come locked and loaded had he known that's what they were doing that day. And the list goes on and on. 1,500 pardons for the J6 rioters, just a handful of cases held out for further review. Let's bring in political reporter Marshall Zellinger now, and this was among the last of a flurry of orders that Trump signed today, all of this within his power solely as president, although, Marshall, Democrats who run the state of Colorado have been trying for years now to insulate this state from some of the president's power.
Yeah, we're going to get a crash course on federal versus state policies. And when it comes to immigration and gender identity, Colorado could look a lot different than other parts of the country. When it comes to immigration, and we've talked about this, in 2019, Colorado lawmakers passed a law signed by Democratic Governor Jared Polis that limits law enforcement involvement in immigration cases. Essentially, only if the federal agents need help executing a warrant because of a crime. If it's a civil issue, local law enforcement is not supposed to help or share information about someone's location. Douglas County and Castle Rock as a town may put that to the test. On energy policy, the president said this several times today.
That is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill.
Let's look at that drill, baby, drill by the statistics. In Colorado, oil production on federal lands was actually up and down during Trump's first term, but grew in Biden's presidency. And Colorado was the 4th highest oil-producing state in 2023. That's the last year we have stats right now. Gas production on federal lands in Colorado dropped during COVID during Trump's term and has gone down since. Colorado was still the 3rd highest gas-producing state on federal land in 2023.
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only 2 genders, male and female.
The federal impact on that statement will differ than state. This could mean U.S. passports might no longer be able to say X for a gender as they currently are allowed. State of Colorado IDs, driver's license, and even birth certificates, however, are dictated by state law. Colorado IDs can say male, female, or X, and birth certificates can be changed to male, female, X, or intersex. What you need to know is understanding the difference between executive orders, the power they have, versus the influence to the people who then enact some of those policies. And it's also federal versus state, Kyle. Decisions made by the president today could impact federal decision-making and federal money, and the money is the big thing. Colorado is built to bubble around some of the policy, but if parts of the state rely on federal funding, some of these executive orders could make Some state agencies think twice because suddenly that's a pot of money that may not exist.
Trump has promised sweeping change for folks who like it and for folks who don't like it. We're going to try to get down to the details as much as we can in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Marshall Zellinger, thank you. For President Trump to enact his mass deportation plans at scale, immigration enforcement experts say he would need to drastically scale up the number of immigration agents nationwide and build out deportation infrastructure that does not currently exist. That's why Trump said during his campaign that he wanted local law enforcement to carry out his deportations. There's a lot of manpower there. But that would be illegal under Colorado law, which limits local cooperation to enforce federal immigration law. Courts have upheld that local authorities do not have the responsibility to carry out immigration enforcement. Republican leaders in Douglas County have indicated they are ready to violate state law to help with Trump's deportations. In tonight's next conversation, I asked Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, a Democrat, whether Denver will violate the law to oppose Trump's deportations.
We'll abide by state and local law, and we will clearly abide by federal law. And so that'll continue to be true. We just won't do federal law enforcement's job for them, and we won't help support their effort to kind of bring terror to communities if they are trying to raid schools or hospitals or churches.
And currently, the courts have upheld that view, that you're under no obligation to enforce federal law.
Correct.
All hell would break loose if courts ruled the other way.
Yes, I think you would find widespread resistance to that.
Democratic Governor Jared Polis says that he welcomes the Trump administration's assistance in removing people from our community who are here illegally and have committed crimes. Do you also welcome that help?
Yeah, we will partner on violent criminals as we have always done. In the past, the last administration, we will do it again. We don't want criminals of any background on our streets, and that's been clear for us consistently.
President Trump attempted to strip federal funding from Denver during the first term. He was overruled by the courts. Are you preparing to live without some federal funding in the second term? At one point, I know your office was even kicking around some numbers.
We're preparing to fight to keep the federal resources that we think Denver taxpayers are entitled to, just like everybody else. And so we assume that he's not going to do that. If he does, we would fight it both with legal action and with political action. You know, there are almost half of America's residents who live in a city or a state that have some sort of protections for migrants. And I don't think you can cut taxpayer funding to half of the country.
You've walked back comments you made suggesting that Denver police and even some citizens would be meeting ICE at the city limits. Have your comments made this city more of a target for the Trump administration?
No, I don't think they have. I mean, he called this project Project Aurora ever since he came to visit Aurora during the campaign, and so that was an area of target. But I think that what we do know is there's a broad divide between saying we're going to round up criminals, which everyone agrees with, and saying you're going to deport 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 million people. That means you are taking people off the job, you're taking grandmothers out of their homes, you're taking kids out of classes at that scale.
There are conservative pundits in Colorado specifically calling on the Trump administration to arrest you. You received a letter in December from a Trump-affiliated legal group that warned you that you could be subject to arrest or potential personal financial liability from private plaintiffs under RICO statutes. What is your response to those who are personally calling for your arrest or for people to go after your family's finances over immigration?
Yeah, we've done nothing to break the law in Denver, and I've done nothing to break the law. When folks arrived in the city and needed services, often they were sent by the Republican governor of Texas to arrive in our city without their own consent. We were not going to leave them outside in the cold at 10 o'clock in the morning on a January night. And so we've provided support to get them connected and up on their feet so that they can live the American dream and get a job and support themselves. That's, we think, what they wanted and what we wanted. So there's nothing we've done that we think is illegal or that we're not proud of.
In my full 15-minute conversation with Denver's mayor, he outlines what the city does plan to do: funding legal help for immigrants, preparing for children to be left waiting at schools when their parents are detained, and considering legal action against raids on hospitals and churches. That full unedited interview is available on the Next YouTube channel or on our podcast, anywhere that you get your podcasts. So NBC News reports that the Trump administration is expected to lift the policy that keeps immigration agents from raiding schools and churches. Our Angeline McCall looks at the potential impact.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Watching the inauguration means a transition of power and a change of strategy for immigration advocate Jeanette Vizquerra.
Lo que yo hacía hace 28 años atrás no funciona o lo que hice en 2017 no va a funcionar ahora.
What she did then? Live in this Denver church to avoid deportation, a so-called sensitive or safe space, off limits to federal agents. An NBC report suggests Trump may overturn that agreement.
Ahorita ya declaró que va a quitar esos acuerdos de que ya no va a haber más lugares sensitivos y ahora va a poder hacer lo que quiere hacer en cualquier lado, y es una falta de respeto.
The list included churches, schools, hospitals, places advocates now worry will be host to immigration raids under a new Trump administration.
Ellos están cambiando sus estrategias y yo soy una persona que me adapto a las circunstancias y también uso otras estrategias de protección a mi gente.
After spending years creating a network of sanctuary churches in Colorado, it's no longer an option she would recommend now for others.
Sí estoy preocupada por la gente que nunca se ha involucrado, que no tiene idea cómo van a navegar esta situación. Nosotros nos merecemos respeto, nos merecemos dignidad y merecemos pelear por lo justo.
Vizquerra is encouraging people to have a family plan in place and really become familiar with what your rights are if you're an immigrant, and suggesting that people collect documents so that if they are deported, there's a plan in place to grant someone power of attorney for your kids or loved ones in the case that families are separated.
Important to remember, as she reminds us, that a lot of folks have been through this before.
Yeah, certainly. I think this is something that a lot of people are familiar with. Just as we know a new administration, though, there could be new rules, new regulations. And so that's why they're kind of asking people to go to different workshops with immigration attorneys so that they can stay up to date. Because it's really important to know, for instance, if someone comes to your home, is it a warrant from a judge or is it a warrant from an ICE officer? Two different things, right, to the immigration community. But if you don't know that, then, you don't know potentially what your rights are.
Ashley McCall, thank you. As we look ahead to the expected impact in Colorado of Trump's mass deportation, it's useful to outline kind of the state of deportations in this state and look at who exactly has been removed from Colorado in recent years.
We will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came.
Despite Donald Trump's mass deportation promises from his first term, deportations, or removals, dropped drastically from the Obama era. They then dropped again during Joe Biden's presidency, although the last year of deportations under Biden were higher than any year under Trump. ICE tracks deportations by Area of Responsibility, or AOR. ICE says the Denver AOR, Colorado and Wyoming, accounted for 5,771 deportations under Biden, about 1% of the national total. The busiest sector along the Mexico border in Texas saw 20 times as many deportations as Denver's sector. Colorado and Wyoming were the 19th busiest area for deportations, ranking just ahead of Buffalo, New York. Deportations from Colorado generally increased year over year during the Biden era, tracking national trends, with increasing proportions of those deported in recent years not having criminal convictions or pending cases. From 28% of fiscal year 2021 deportations being non-criminal other violators to nearly half in 2024. As the Biden administration topped the Trump-era deportation numbers.
I will liberate Colorado. I will give you back your freedom and your life.
Trump vowed to begin his second-term mass deportation in Colorado, part of his focus on so-called sanctuaries in cities and states run by Democrats. NBC News and others report ICE will begin its raids in Chicago instead, which saw more than twice as many deportations as Colorado during the Biden administration. Both New Orleans and the Atlanta area have sanctuary city policies, and they saw more deportations than Chicago over the last 4 years. But both are in red states that Trump won. We'll be watching in the days, weeks, and months ahead just how much of Trump's deportations are truly an increase in immigration enforcement and how much is just standard actions being repackaged for the media and public to create the shock and awe that the Trump team has openly said they want people to feel, so that more folks here without documentation will make the choice to self-deport. Despite the deep freeze, Denver still turned out to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., continuing a decades-long tradition. And soon, the Great Thaw will begin, which will lead to busy days for first responders, who get the calls better intended for plumbers when those frozen pipes burst. That's next.
Welcome back. I'm 9 News Weather Impact Team meteorologist Kathy Sabin. We're almost through it. Today was the coldest day at 10 above. Tonight will be the coldest night with a forecast low of -10. A wind chill to -25. And now that the sun has set, we've got good radiational cooling and light winds. It is going to be a bitter cold evening. The high and low are there for comparison. We see that all of the snow has moved south away from the area. We continue under a cold weather advisory through 9 o'clock tomorrow. Again, this will be the coldest night. We're -3 right now. That's our current temperature. You factor in the wind, and we're already starting to see wind chill values of 18 to 20 below, and we'll see those numbers go even lower. An extreme cold warning for wind chills to 50 below in southeastern and western Colorado, and our advisory here in Denver will cancel out at 9 o'clock. So weather impact day through noon tomorrow. I think we'll get above freezing at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I think it'll happen. Cool but dry Thursday, Friday, warm Friday, and it looks like maybe another storm with chance for snow over the weekend.
Thank you for your support for the latest Word of Thanks microgiving project, raising funds for the Vail Valley Charitable Fund. They help working class folks in that very expensive area of our state deal with emergency bills. You've raised more than $25,000 to help their work. You're like this close to $14 million in microgiving, benefiting nonprofits in every corner of our state. If you know of a great organization that could use a boost from all of us, email me at next@9news.com or text NEXT 303-871-1491.
Braving the cold, because Martin Luther King did it, and we can do it.
Denver's annual tribute to MLK Jr. is one of the oldest in the country. Not even sub-zero temperatures could stop it. Firefighters know what happens after a cold week like this. When the temperatures rise, that's when things get messy. They're preparing to respond to hundreds of calls for burst pipes. All the pipes that froze over the last couple days are going to heat back up this week, and some of them will come apart, leading to flooding and people calling 911 instead of a plumber. South Metro Fire is putting a special truck on the road specifically to deal with burst pipes tomorrow. Last time we saw a freeze like this, South Metro saw one of their busiest days in their history.
A busy day for South Metro Fire Rescue is around 100 calls a day with our 30 different stations. Last year at this time we had 300 calls in one day, so it's about triple the amount of calls.
So busy day for South Metro is that's pretty impressive. Back in December of 2022, Denver Fire Department also saw its busiest day on record, responding to burst pipes after a freeze. More than 800 calls for help in one day. Today's sub-zero temperatures did not stop people from showing up for Denver's MLK Day Marade, the half-march, half-parade that honors Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Organizers shortened the outdoor ceremonies, and they set up warming shelters along the route.
I'm braving the cold today because we have a legacy to uphold. Dr. King marched for us and he fought for our rights, and the least that I can do is show up and show my support and continue this legacy.
For the last 40 years, since before when MLK Day was federally recognized, thousands have marched through Denver in honor of Dr. King's legacy. Even in the cold today, hundreds of people came out to march from the MLK Memorial in City Park to Civic Center Park. The event's organizers say the parade has never been canceled, not even 1996, after a foot of snow fell on the day of the event. We're back to finish with your feedback, as always, next. Feedback tonight from Nietzsche. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Nietzsche in Castle Rock, who wrote in to say, "Thank you for reminding your audience in detail about the heinous crimes committed on January 6 by Coloradans and others." This a reference to the folks who received pardons within the hour from President Donald Trump. Well, Nietzsche, it seems like only fair, right, if we're going to talk about somebody being pardoned for a crime, that we also explain what the crime was. I think a lot of people watching this show in Colorado back the blue and would probably be interested in hearing specifically about those who assaulted law enforcement. Additionally, I would be surprised if a few of them don't run for office here in Colorado in the future. We'll see you next time.